Many years ago, in the 6th century, the 7th century, in the Sumerian kingdom, there lived a community that was called the Ashkenazi of the Khazarian kingdom. They were very clever people, but were very deceitful, very evil, and they practiced what we call the Baal worship. In the Baal worship, they sacrificed children. They slit the throats of their children, threw them in fires. That was the way they practiced their way of life. They were very good in business. They were very deceitful, they were very evil, and the neighboring kingdoms were actually afraid of the Ashkenazi people. And who are these that were neighbors of the Ashkenazi? They were the Russians. The Ashkenazi people lived in the areas of the modern-day Ukraine, expanding to Russia. That whole landmass, that's where we found the Ashkenazi people. And the Russian rulers then were not very happy with the way the Ashkenazi people lived. And the king of the Russian Empire always sent a message to the Ashkenazi kingdom and told them, you will have to stop the way you live. You'll have to stop the way that you worship, the Baal worship, the killing of children, sacrificing, the deceitfulness. You'll have to stop this. And according to the Russian ruler, they needed to convert to Judaism or Christianity or Muslim. They were allowed to choose the kind of religion they wanted to fit into and change. But the Ashkenazi were very shrewd people. They pretended to change, but all what they did, they just picked small aspects of Judaism and branded themselves as Ashkenazi Judaists. But they did not embrace the way of life of Judaism. Some of them changed to the Islam, a few of them changed to Christianity, but a majority took the Judaic way of living. But remember, they just pretended. They didn't change the Baal worship. They didn't change the way of life. And that led to a war. The Russian ruler attacked the kingdom, the Khazarian kingdom, and they escaped and ran towards Europe, the areas of Spain, Scotland, Germany. And wherever they went, small groups of Ashkenazis were left in those areas, all the way to British, and they settled in the entire of Europe. And today we know them as the Ashkenazi Judaists. They are not Judaists. They were not Jewish in any way. They pretended to be to cover up what they practiced. Now the Ashkenazi Khazarians have settled across Europe. One of the families in the Ashkenazi group of people is the Rothschild family. The Rothschild was a royal blood. They never married outside the family. They only married cousins. The Rothschild, Meyer Rothschild, the senior most Rothschild, had 5 sons. He raised those 5 sons who married their cousins, and they were sent across 5 countries in Europe to run the banking business. Amongst the things that they did, the Rothschild family would give travel notes, travel certificates to travelers as they traveled from one region to the other. These travelers would in exchange give gold, bronze, or diamonds, all these precious minerals. They would leave them in the custody of the Rothschild. Then the Rothschild would give them travel certificates. And once they travel, by the time they come back, those travel certificates have been charged interest. So they became very, very rich. They were the richest family holding a lot of precious metal and gold in those days. And that led them to become the bankers of the kings, the queen, even the Vatican. The Rothschild were the official bankers of the Vatican. They were the official bankers of the British kingdom, the Scottish kingdom, all those kingdoms in Europe. They were immensely rich. Now, let's go together. The Rothschild himself, the Meyer Rothschild, the patriarch, gave birth to 5 sons. All these sons are sent across Europe, Germany, British, France, I can't remember, 5 countries where they established the central banks in those countries. So this business now was spread across Europe and ran by who? By the Rothschild sons. They managed to control the economies of this country. And the Rothschild are the ones that funded the world wars. All the wars, they funded both sides. They funded the World War I, World War II, all the wars, the French Revolution were all funded by the Rothschild. So they funded both sides. So this is the reason they became immensely rich and with power. And as years went by and by and by, they became more powerful than presidents, more powerful than kings and queens. They actually toppled kings and queens in those days. This is how powerful the Rothschild became. And I will continue and explain how, until today, these Khazarians control the world. Did I mention that Meyer Rothschild settled in Germany when they were sent away from Russia? They had become so powerful, so rich, and they started developing orders, secret societies, and recruiting people where people would take oaths and become part of these orders. One of them was the Order of Malta. It worked in hospitals and the military. The Order of Malta was actually the military for the Vatican, for the Pope. And because the rulers then, the kings and queens and kingdoms, were not very happy with what was going on, they would rain on these orders because they're sort of secret societies. They would take oaths, and if you read the kind of oaths they were taking, what you see on the surface was not what exactly was happening. And they kept changing these orders. So we had the Knight Templars. The Knights Templars were supposed to be escorting pilgrims to Jerusalem. You know, the Knights Templars worked directly under the Pope, and they were supported by the Roman Catholic Church. But their kings and queens and kingdoms were not happy with this. They'd rain on them, and this would lead them to changing their names, changing to another order. That's why we get the Order of Christ. We also get the Jesuits Order, the Jesuit Council. All these were under the Roman Catholic Church, but these were orders under the Ashkenazi Rothschild family. They were sort of having parallel governments. And as the Maya Rothschild was in Germany, came across a young, intelligent man by the name of Adam, recruited Adam, who grew to be a scholar in a university and is the one who coined the Order of the Perfectionists. These were the Freemasons. The Freemasons exist until today. These were secret societies established by the Rothschild. Adam also is the one who came up with the Order of the Illuminati. So from this video moving forward, you will find me using the word cabal. Cabal is another word for the Illuminati. These are the people who rule the world until today as we speak. The Order of the Illuminati, or cabal, rule the world today. They look like a sort of a spider web. These organizations look like they're not connected. They look like they're scattered across the world. You know, they're not connected in any way, but in actual sense, they're all very well connected. The Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Jesuit Council, and you will see how these names develop to different organizations that until today are ruling the world. Now you know that all the central banks in Europe were privately managed and privately owned by the Rothschild family. Now, here we come. There was a push to have a private Federal Reserve Bank of America. And in 1900, there's a company that was owned by the JP Morgan that was constructing the Titanic. You know the story of the Titanic? And all the rich Americans were to be in the Titanic. Amongst them were three richest Americans. One of them is John Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, and Charles Melville. And you know the long story of the Titanic? They all perished and died in the Titanic. Immediately after, in 1913, the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank of America was formed. Guess what? Owned by who? By the cabal and the Rothschild family. Are we together? Let's go together, piece all the information, all the videos together. Let's move together. Remember, the World War II started in 1914. In 1913, America has a private reserve, the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, they are not all the banks that came into the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank. But what did the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank do? They released so much money into the market, and then all of a sudden pulled money back, and all the other banks collapsed. They lost so much money because there was so much money out on loans, but when they pulled the money back, then those loans could not get paid. Then these non-federal banks collapsed. And what did the cabal do? They bought off all the small banks, of course, bought them for throwaway prices. And that is how the Federal Reserve Bank of America was formed and monopolized money in America. Prior to this information, the Reserve Bank of America was operating on a gold reserve. But from 1914, when the World War started, they no longer operated on a gold reserve. They printed money with no gold reserve to back the same. I hope we are together until that. And now, they are the only bank that is running money in the United States of America. Remember, privately owned by the cabal. So the entire of America, the entire of Europe, all of the central banks are privately managed. Please don't lose me. Remember the 5 sons of the Rothschild? The one that was placed to run the Central Bank of Britain was called Nathan Rothschild. And he was quoted saying he actually controls and rules the rulers of Britain because he controls the money. Now, in the year 1917, the leader, the ruler of British, gifts Nathan Rothschild with Palestine. This video is very important because it's going to make reference in the future on a couple of videos that I'm going to do. Remember, these Khazarian, these Ashkenazi Khazarians, pretended to be Judaized, pretended to be Jewish, but they were not. They didn't even like the lifestyle of the Judaic people. They dispersed them because on the learned elders of Zion, the protocols of the elders of Zion, there's a stipulation of what they were called to do, the Kabbals. To the outside world, they were Jewish, but in the real sense, they were not. They didn't even like them. They pretended. They mingled. They came into the lives of the Jewish people, but came to dismantle the Jewish people. So here now, the Rothschild has been given Palestine as a gift by the British ruler. And from 1917 moving forward, there's so much that has happened until today. Genocides and genocides have happened. Extermination of the whole of the Palestine communities. Because why? The particular land that was gifted to the Rothschilds, it's supposed to be inhabited by the Jewish. Which Jewish? Which Jewish are these? Put that in your head. That question is going to be answered as we go on. They have taken the entire Palestine, the West Bank. Even as we're speaking, there's a genocide going on. A lot of what has been done in Jerusalem has been done by the Rothschild family. The parliament, the temple, all the government infrastructure are private properties of the Rothschilds. Put that in your head. A lot of unanswered questions, we'll answer them as we go on. In the year 1980, a man who concealed his identity went to America, Georgia, the state of Georgia, and elected a monument, a larger-than-life monument, out of this world, so expensive, but he just went and elected a monument in Georgia. It is called the Era of Reason. And on that monument, there are inscriptions of writings put in 8 world languages. Kiswahili is actually one of them. And on the top of the monument, the slabs that sit on top, the same inscriptions in 4 ancient languages. I'm going to read what is inscripted on this monument. Number 1, keep the population at 500 million. Number 2, guide reproduction wisely, improving through fitness and diversity. Number 3, unite humanity with one living language. Number 4, rule with passion, with faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Number 5, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Number 6, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Number 7, avoid petty laws and the useless officials. Number 8, balance personal rights with social duties. Number 9, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Number 10, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. Just listen carefully to what I read. In simple terms, this is the description of the New World Order sort of manifesto placed in a monument in Georgia in the year 1980. And in simple terms, this means population control, one world language, one world court, social duties over personal rights as human beings, reason over passion, nature over human beings, truth, age of reason. I want you to deeply think about those 10 things that I have mentioned. These are the prints of the New World Order, inscripted in a monument in Georgia. I will make reference to this in the future videos of what exactly this means. My lovely people, we have to do this together. I'm going to collapse a lot of small videos to this one video because I want us to do this research together. Humanity has to lift itself from the matrix. We have to use what we call collective consciousness. This cannot be done by one person. So just come. Let's do this. And when you do this research, do not use Google. They own it. Do not use AI. They control it. Go to BitChute. Go to Rambo. Get literature. Read far and wide. Compare data here and there. And until you come to the conclusion of what exactly is the truth. Now, we're not in doubt that they own, the Federal Bank of America is privately owned. So now, you know that the dollar is owned. Who owns the dollar? Put it down here. A lot of wars that you see today, it is because countries threaten to step out of the dollar. Those are when you see like the BRICS, you see this old tariff, the Trump tariff war is just a fight about a group of countries trying to step away from the dollar. That's where the problem is. Okay, we've looked at the money they control. A bloodline in the cabal controls education. Everything that you've learned in school from kindergarten to university is controlled. You learn what they have approved. So what they've not approved, you cannot learn in school. They control education. They fund so much of this research. They fund universities. Another bloodline in the cabal controls the science. They fund science papers. They fund research. And when you find people who are trying to do their own research, they disappear. You know about the Tesla. You know about the technology of cars that can be driven with water. That technology killed. The original owners disappear because they control the science. Tell me which bloodline does that. They fund a lot of universities across the world, and they take actually the top cream, the top brains in Africa, and put them in those universities, give them scholarships. But the studies, the science is controlled. Okay, are we together? Now, they control health too. They control health, they control research, they manufacture diseases, they patent diseases, they make money out of those diseases. And when independent scientists want to do a research on their own, you know of the HIV story, a lot of these doctors, a lot of these scientists disappear. You must fit a particular narrative. Just do a study on cancer, for instance. You will understand a lot of things about cancer, about HIV. Check about on all diseases that have patents. Now, they also control oil, my people. They control everything to do with oil, crude oil, mining and everything, byproducts. And they use that oil and everything along the oil, the process of oil, to even make synthetic medicines. They took original patents, original ideas of medicines from Africa and other early civilizations. And they use synthetics, most of them from petroleum byproducts, to make medicine. They control medicine. Big Pharma, the cabal. I want us to work together. So they're literally controlling every single aspect of life as we know it. Education, oil. I didn't talk about energy. They control energy. And remember, they control science and what is discovered. Any science that is meant to liberate humanity is suppressed. And the scientists are taken out. That science is not allowed to see the light of day. You know about the Tesla and all his research. You know what happened to him, all his patents. You know about cars. You know this technology that cars can actually be driven out of water. But where is that technology? This technology that actually there's energy in the atmosphere that can be harvested and power homes. You know, small consumptions in the home. We have energy in the atmosphere. I don't know if you know there are actually trees, many trees that actually have a current. You can actually collect energy through collecting that energy from trees. This science will never see the light of day because science is controlled. So they control health. They control education, they control science. We know they control the money. They're controlling every single aspect of human life. Are we together up to there? All under the cabal. Have I talked about the entertainment industry? Have I talked about Hollywood? Have I talked about music? They control every single aspect of human life. But then they come in another layer of philanthropic world-loving organizations, human-loving organizations. You know them? The World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the population control, you know. All these beautiful names of organizations belong to them. Now, they come in those organizations, fund them. They fund them in a big way to try and help humanity. Is that help? Open your eyes. Let's do this in this particular video. Let's build this information together. I'm going to go back in the next video to tackle a bit of the World War II. Then I'm now going to connect what happened after the end of World War II and until where we are today and where we are headed. But remember, humanity can only lift itself from the matrix, from collective consciousness. We all have to understand what is going on. We all have to wake up. We have to stop sleeping. We have to stop being afraid of information. Stop being comfortable in a certain level. Understand, research, and lift yourself. This is not a war on individuals. It's a war on humanity, human race. God's human race. You remember the monument in Georgia, the Georgia Guildstone? You remember in part, I think it's part 6 of this series, where I explained everything that is inscripted in that monument. Now, World War II has come, it's ended, And the cabal decides to put up a United Nations. The United Nations initially was called the League of Nations. And at inception, there were, I think, 58 countries were members of the League of Nations that graduated to the United Nations. And the Rockefeller family is one of the cabal families in the US. And I hope by now you know what they're in charge of in terms of control of mankind. They form a group of people called the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome is a group of 100 men and women, not elected by anyone, not democratically representing humanity. These are ex-presidents, scientists, scholars, name them all, clever, sharp people, professionals, elected into a club called the Club of Rome. And what is their work? To advise the United Nations. To advise the United Nations. And this was a think tank for the United Nations. They were the first to come up with the global revolution, the limits of growth. Okay, are we together? Let's go bit by bit by bit. In the Club of Rome, the think tank, after a lot of discussions, agreed that pollution, global warming, famine, all caused by human beings, were the problem of planet Earth. So they were in total agreement that humanity, human beings, are the biggest threat to the world, the Earth. And they coined a word that they throw all over the place: sustainability, 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 sustainability. I'm sure you know and you've heard about the word sustainability. This is a United Nations word. And they were in agreement that human beings are the threat to the existence of the globe. I want us to go together. Don't leave me. And if you have not watched the previous parts, you better watch the previous parts. Let's talk about the history of the United Nations. Formed after World War II, meant to bring peace, maintain peace in the world. Tell me one place the United Nations has gone and there has been peace. Tell me one place. We have the Congo, we have Cambodia, we have so many places. Go to your records, and the United Nations is known to have caused the biggest human rights violations in itself. Rape cases, sexual abuse, exploitation, like a sort of sustainable crime and violence in those areas. Tell me one place they went and there was total peace and life came back to normal. Now we are together. We are at the level of the United Nations. And the United Nations has been formed by the cabal, signed into, it's like a peace organization. But is that the case? Is that the case? A bit of recap. We know about the Club of Rome, the think tank of the United Nations. Now, in 1992, the Earth Summit was held in Brazil. In the Earth Summit, that's where they launched the Common Future Book. That summit was called Conference of Environment and Earth Summit. Let me refer a bit to my notes on the things that were agreed in the Earth Summit. This is the Agenda 21, okay, in 1992. Action plan constructed by the United Nations to inventory the control of land, water, minerals, plants, animals, construction, information, energy, production, law enforcement, and all humanity being in the world. What was that? An inventory. Okay. 2, collapsing civilized society for the sake of humanity. Remember, they said that the human beings are the biggest threat to the earth. So now here they're talking about collapsing civilized society for the saving of the earth. Number 3, global biodiversity assessment. Private land is unsustainable. Okay. Now, in the future video, you're going to hear me talking about the smart cities, okay? Wildlands, suburbs, private vehicles, air conditioning, the poor, over 1 billion are unsustainable. We go back to the Georgia Guildstone, where they said that the world population should be reduced to 500 million. So they're saying these billions of youth, they call them the useless eaters, are unsustainable. Please, I hope you're good in piecing this information together. They also introduced something we call ESG, public-private partnership. Environment for E, social for S, G for economic. And that is supposed to be a partnership that is supposed to be bearable, equitable, and sustainable. Again, and viable. Remember the word, sustainability. Population policy control was passed in the Agenda 21. They also, in that book, they also brought in something about indoctrination of children. Okay, what children should learn. Remember, we talked about education, how education is controlled. Now this is going down to the level of children. Then they talked about earth groans every time a new baby is born. You're too many. You're missing earth. Then let's keep going. Strict migration policies in favor of open borders. Public land not sustainable for human beings. Guys, I hope you can see where we're getting to. Public land not sustainable for human beings. Private property for a few. Carbon tax. So every human being born on planet Earth, you start paying carbon tax. And of course, they've coined all the lies. Remember, they control all the science. They control everything that comes of the science labs, the innovations and everything. And now, carbon dioxide is supposed to be poisonous to Earth. It's a lie, guys. That's a lie. Okay, it will take in the Agenda 21. There's supposed to be 2 groups of human beings. They're going to wipe out the middle class. The human beings trying to strive to get to a particular place should be wiped out. It will introduce reorganization. Let me go deeper into that. Green City Center, mega districts, human settlement. You know about the 15-minute cities? Now you're connecting dots. Islands of human habitations, like they're supposed to be controlled in particular areas, not all over. Remember, private land is not sustainable. Okay, I hope you're putting these things together. Urbanization projects, 15-minute cities. Okay, climate change is a created crisis. Of course, this is my notes. So before I go to Agenda 2030, I hope now you can piece this information together with the Georgian Guildstone, with the Club of Rome recommendations before we go to Agenda 2030. These are the recommendations of the Earth Summit. Remember who owns it. Remember who is the think tank. Remember who is churning all this information. Okay, and remember who owns this organization. I'm going to do another video about Agenda 2030, and then I will go to the organizations, all the organizations that work within or are connected to the United Nations in one way or the other. And now you can start connecting the dots. I bet you've heard the words like the Great Reset, Digital ID, Surveillance, Global Digital Pact. You've heard about all those words. This is Agenda 2030, which was formulated in 2015. It's an upgrade of Agenda 2021. And they have beautiful 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Remember, all these are agendas under the United Nations. And we've already looked at the United Nations. Nothing good has come from the United Nations. So I do not know what makes them, think that now humanity is going to trust them for these agendas. They've never brought peace anywhere in the world. They've trampled on all human rights wherever they've gone. They've not made the life of the common human being any easier. But of course, and I'm sure you remember the Club of Rome, the advisors to the Agenda 21, non-elected people who sit down and make decisions. Now here they come with Agenda 2030, where humanity is the biggest threat to the globe, and we have to come with a scheme. The SDGs, sustainable development goals, that needs to be implemented, to save the world from humanity. And out of those 17 SDGs, they steal everything that God gave a human being. One thing that God gave you is the freedom of choice. So choice is going to be taken away from you. Under that Agenda 2030, there's going to be digital surveillance. All money, they are talking about wireless money, the e-money, they're talking about digital currency. They want to wipe out paper money. They want to have all money in a system, a credit system like what happens in China. Your tax, everything collected together. They'll surveil you from one place. That's what they want to do with Agenda 2030. And they have a very beautiful name for that, but that's taking over, you're right. This is the Pact for the Future. One world government. Governments are going to lose sovereignty. I'm going to do another post expounding on Agenda 2030 in total details. Actually, Agenda 2030 essentially means the new world order. You need to watch all the videos and piece everything together and see how it comes to Agenda 2030. And understand that the cabal is the most deceitful organization ever existed on earth. You need to understand what's the meaning of that deceit. They come as saviors, but they're literally going to vanquish humanity. Agenda 2030, beautiful, taking over our land, taking over our food, taking over our freedom, taking over our choices. Let me read out for you what the United Nations seeks to achieve with Vision 2030. One world government, one world cashless currency, one world central bank, one world military, the end of national sovereignty, the end of all private-owned property, the end of the family unit, depopulation, control of population growth and population density, mandatory multiple vaccines, universal basic income, that's austerity, microchip society for purchasing, travel, tracking, and controlling. Now on this, that's another digital currency comes in, digital surveillance that comes in there, implementation of a world social credit system, like what happens in China today, trillions of applications hooked into the 5G monitoring system. That's the Internet of Things. I don't know in your country if this happened, but in my country, Kenya, when we had the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, there was a haste of installation of 5G towers across the country. The 5G and the coronavirus and the corona vaccine was something that went together. Government raised children. That's why they're pushing indoctrination of children. So parents will not have a right of raising children. Now the government will raise children. Government owned and controlled schools, colleges and universities, the end of private transportation, owning cars, etc. All businesses owned by government and corporations, the restriction of non-essential air travel, human beings concentrated into human settlement zone cities, end of irrigation, the end of private farms and grazing livestock, the end of family homes, restricted land use that serves human needs, the ban of natural and synthetic drugs and naturopathic medicines, the end of fossil fuel. I'm sure you've heard about electric cars. There's so much you've heard in different words, but just means all what you see here. When you talk about vax mandate, digital currency, one world government, this is it. You see, all this describe the one world government. But when you go to the 17 SDGs, they're describing this, but in a very acceptable way. You will own nothing and be happy. World Economic Forum. Another questions that are going through your mind right now. How does the UN manage to control governments that keep changing hands from one administration to the other? But they've managed to have control of these countries, 195, over the years, still implementing their plan. It is because the UN works with so many organizations, the seen and the unseen, the corporate monopolies, the lobbies, the foreign organizations. I'm going to list but just a few, about the World Economic Forum, the WHO dealing with health, World Bank, IMF, the Bretton Woods Institute, the Food and Agriculture Organizations, FAO, UNESCO, that deals with education, science, organizations and culture, the ILO, International Labour Organization, ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, ITU, International Telecommunication Organization, IMO, International Maritime Organization, the private, the lobby group, the secret groups, the Club of Rome, the Bilderberg Group, the ICE-PAC, the Club of 300, UNICEF, the investment companies, the BlackRock, the Vanguard, the ICJ, the International Court that is supposed to be sorting global cases that seems to let criminals off the hook. We have the Gavi, the immunization organization that works with the World Economic Forum. Okay, are we together? Let's talk about the IFAD, International Fund for Agriculture Development, touching on the food. UPU, Universal Postal Union, the WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. Remember about the patents? Remember about the science? These are the organizations running these things. UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. YWMO, World Meteorological Organization. We talked about the weather. The weather manipulation. I don't know if you've mentioned that. UNDP, UNICEF, UNHCR, that deals with the refugees. UNFPA, United Population Fund. Remember the population control aspect. UN Women, UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. Remember the climate change, the climate narrative, UN Habitat, OCHM, Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. All these, just a few to mention the organizations that work directly and indirectly with the UN. That's why they are able to have a total control of the globe. Total control, my people. That's the reason.